by 2020. Finance Minister agrees with IMF's advice on fuel subsidy removal. Ban on mining activities temporary, federal government tells investors. Plus, Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, African Development Bank approves $4.8 million. Details of these and more on this edition of Business Express on the network service of the NTA. I am Muplang Dakok. The African Development Bank says it has approved an institutional support grant of $4.8 million to the African Union to accelerate the momentum of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement received its 22nd ratification on April 2nd, bringing the agreement into force. Nigeria has, however, been assessing the impact of the AFCFTA would have on the economy before ratifying the agreement. The AFCFTA is a major force for continental agreement aimed at expanding intra-African trade by up to $35 billion per year and ushering in freedom of movement for goods, services, and people across the continent's internal borders. Public finance management, and in particular revenue mobilization in sub-Saharan Africa, came under scrutiny at the annual meetings of the World Bank and IMF in Washington, D.C., as stakeholders discussed challenges ahead and advance broader global development agenda. Leah Katun Babatunde in this report presents the views, concerns, and suggestions for Nigeria.
The picture painted by the president of the World Bank, David Malpass, is not a good one for a large portion of countries, especially in Africa. By the year 2030, nearly 9 in 10 extremely poor people will be Africans, and half the world's poor will be living in fragile and conflict-affected settings. Losing up more capital geared towards improving growth in countries currently experiencing a slowdown with prudent fiscal management is very imperative for the region, with the World Bank president calling for urgent action by individual countries in combating poverty.
That we share a common view that poverty alleviation, that shared prosperity are key goals of what the World Bank should be doing, but also what nations around the world should be trying to do.
For the IMF, the key is multiple policies that are country-specific, and Madame Lagarde emphasized the outcome of the fund's Article 4 consultancy in Nigeria, which suggests doing away with fuel subsidy.
No less than about $5.2 trillion that are spent on fuel subsidies and the consequences thereof. And the Fiscal Affairs Department has actually identified, how much would have been saved fiscally, but also in terms of human life, if there had been the right price on carbon emission as of 2015.
She went ahead to point out that low revenue concerns in Nigeria that has seen low tax to GDP ratio persist, if not tackled, will affect investment in health, education and infrastructure.
In a related development, Nigeria's Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed says the federal government is taking the advice of the IMF in its Article 4 consultation with Nigeria to phase out implicit fuel subsidies while strengthening social safety nets. The minister stated this while speaking about her engagement with officials of the World Bank and the IMF at the spring meeting in Washington.
I would say it's good advice, but also we have to implement it in a manner that is both successful as well as sustainable. We are not in a situation to wake up one day and just remove subsidy. We have to educate the people. We have to show the Nigerian citizens what the replacements for those subsidies will be. So we have a lot of work to do, and we also need to understand that you don't remove subsidies large amounts in one go, that it has to be graduated, and the public has to be well informed on what you're trying to do. We are asking the World Bank in particular to review some of the new initiatives that they have put in place, an initiative that involves them looking at implementation systems when they are providing funding for infrastructure. What we found in Nigeria is that the EESS that they have put in place is causing significant delays in the rollout of infrastructure. We understand that is well intended, but we've informed them that they need to review how they implement it so that we're not overtly slowed down because of the new procedures.
The minister was also part of the G24 ministers meeting where effective public debt and cash management, global slowdown and the need to build fiscal buffers dominated discussions. And still from the spring meetings, Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, says it has disbursed 31 billion naira to micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, in the country in its first full year of operation in 2018. Managing Director of the bank, Tony Okpanachi, who disclosed this at the ongoing spring meeting, said the bank has changed the landscape of MSMEs funding in the country with innovative lending and focus on long-term loans to the sector of the economy. The Managing Director noted that they are working to achieve a disbursement level of about 100 billion naira at the end of this year, which could be scaled up to 389 billion naira by the end of 2023. Now, a bank's business is to take risks and manage them. It succeeds when the risks taken are reasonable and commensurate with resources, and as a credit culture forms the bedrock for risk-taking. Risk is the reason for a bank to establish a sound credit culture. Now, to discuss credit management can be used, or how credit management can be used to create national culture of integrity, I have in the studio the Register Institute of Credit Administration of Nigeria, Professor Chris Onalo, and we'll have him just after this break. Professor Chris Onalo, thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so talking about credit culture, it is said that credit culture can only be established with cooperation and involvement from both parties. So how would you assess this? How true is it?
Well, credit culture is a fallout of people looking to take something now and pay for it tomorrow,
Okay.
or going to where money is with bankable projects, creative ideas, an idea that can translate into creating jobs and wealth. And then those who has the money will take a critical look at your packaging and decide to give you what you don't have right now, which is money. And then if that continues, then it has the tendency to become norm, which means that it affects everybody. People will not need to be restricted by what they don't have, because what you don't have, somebody else is having it, and you can go there and, you know, form an agreement on which basis you can take what you don't have. So if that practice or the awareness or trend of things becomes prevalent around us, then it becomes a culture, it becomes a system, it becomes something that humans live with. And I think we've seen that in developed economies, you know, which over time has helped them to come to where they are right now.
Yes, so I was going to ask you,
Yes.
do you think we have that credit culture in Nigeria?
Credit culture does not come from the blue.
Okay.
As long as you have humans who are essentially existing to consume product and services, there will always be credit, you know, as long as you and I have passion to look good, you know, put on something. Could be capital things, could be flexible things like dressing, even cosmetics. Risk wash, we put on everything here in the studio, and it's all over the world. So,
but is our culture, our credit culture, a good one? Would you rate it as?
Well, the credit culture in Nigeria is, to say the least, fairly disappointing.
Okay.
But then you cannot blame the Nigerian people as a society, because you don't have you can't get to know something until you are educated, until you are taught. That's why we go to school. Okay. And the credit system requires deliberate effort, you know, to informing people, educating people what is available and how to assess what is available, which you don't have. And that is why I talk so much about trust, you know, integrity, you know, ability to trust someone, and someone has to prove that he or she can be trusted. And so it's a culture that has been living with us, but we don't seem to have harnessed it. You know, we don't seem to have realized that, oh, credit, taking something now today and returning it tomorrow or paying for it tomorrow is the best, you know, system that grows entrepreneurship, is the best system that expands production, is the best system that brings out the hidden potential, you know.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So best credit system is said to be undermined by quality standards or credit disciplines. Where does management come in?
Well, like I said before, credit is take it today, pay for it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the distance between tomorrow and today that you are taking requires management. And there are people who are called credit managers, credit controllers, credit professionals that comes in to manage that few hours of difference between today and tomorrow.
Okay.
And it could be 30 days. It could be collect it today, at the end of the month, come and pay. Or in the case of financial credit, you can take a loan and it is planned for 6 months or 1 year or 3 years repayment. That gap between when it was lifted or given to you, approved to you based on certain parameters anyway, and when you have to pay back completely, there are a lot of scenarios involved that you got to manage. You know, typically we have 5 C's of credit, and I'm not going to mention all of them, but we have circumstances, we have condition that is involved. You have also capacity. Now, these things has to do with human behavior. And the human behavior, is it reflects on organizational culture. For example, if there are no human beings in this NTA building, the building doesn't speak out. But because you are here, you are speaking out, and it's not taken as you, but it's taken as NTA speaking out.
So the managers
are trained, to manage the gap, to manage the promised gap. Managers are there. They are called credit managers. And you find them in manufacturing companies, you find them in oil and gas, you find them in telecommunication, hospital, medicine, construction, banking and finance, everywhere. Consumer credit, including the government. Don't forget also that government have a microcredit system, that trusted the people.
Yes.
Population is growing, and you have to empower people. People has to come out, not because they don't want to do anything, but there must be an attraction. I have impediment, I have constraint. I want to be able to sell this more, but what I have with me is so small. So government has introduced government enterprise empowerment program, JEEP, which target at people that don't have collaterals, people that don't have the banking language knowledge, but credit is made available so that they can jump at it. So you found out that, but in spite of that, you have people who are trained to manage, to get these people to honor the commitment, the gesture that the government has shown to them. And so the managers are called those who manages this relationship to make sure that there's no default, or there's a minimal default, or that there is a comeback, tendency later on the part of those who has taken it. They are called credit managers.
All right. So let's talk about integrity.
Yeah.
What impact does it have on the people and the nation, talking about credit?
Well, credit in developed countries, hardly you find any developed economy whose system is not credit-driven. And it is robust, it is successful because people respect agreement. People respect their word. Integrity is ability to say something and keep to it. You don't have to come back telling stories. Like I said before, we have 5 C's in credit, and credit managers are trained. They go to school. They have their qualification in credit management, essentially to manage conduct and behavior of people and to help them not to disown their own word. So you find a situation where integrity in this respect is affecting the easy management of credit. Now, over the years, I think that is, getting out of the memory of the people, that when you people go to the manufacturing company, for example, I am seeing very nice air conditioning in your studio here. These air conditioners are manufactured by manufacturing companies, and they don't sell on cash and carry basis, at least up to 95%. So they use distributors that they have. Over time, they have assessed their integrity and the reputation that these people, when they said, come at the end of the month and pay back the value of these air conditioner I'm giving to you, which is about maybe 200 or 300 pieces, and people respected that and sold it to their own customer and come back to the manufacturing company and pay what they promised. That is integrity. You can't divert the product that is subject of credit into another use. You can't. So now we look at it that credit is a veritable instrument to build the consciousness in people that you got to be trusted. You got to say something and leave it there. Don't shift the goalpost. And it's biting in. This don't shift the goalpost is biting so hard on our national integrity. That is to say, people will tell you something and they don't keep to it.
Let's move on.
Right.
Okay. So what are the forms of credit, the different forms of credit, and who qualifies to take what?
Well, different forms of credit. You have microcredit, you have macro credit. I'll explain that. The credit that goes to artisans, that goes to market women, that goes to farmers, that goes to SMEs, that goes to multinationals, that goes to blue chip companies, that goes to conglomerates, that goes to government, and then there's exchange there. Government give credit to the people. Companies can also give credit line to the government. Government also give credit to the... So it is that in interwoven. We have, so we have commercial credit, consumer credit, financial credit.
Okay.
Then you have international credit. You know, if you listen to the discussant at the spring in Washington, they're talking about Nigeria, you can borrow, but use it very well. You know, so credit is all around us. Your second question that goes with that is who qualifies for credit?
Yes.
Now you have to make yourself qualify for credit.
How?
Well, on two fronts. First is because you have consumer credit. As a person, you have the right to buy something from shopping malls, from supermarket, from ShopRite, if you like, from all kinds of massive modern, marketplaces with the use of your credit card, which sets for you credit limit on your credit card. You know, you can't have cash system anymore. And you don't have to have cash tied down in your bank account, which is the consequence of debit card that we have today. We don't have credit card yet in Nigeria, but we have debit card which banks issued. But we are looking, by the time industrial revolution springs up, which I give very great confidence to the government at the moment, that all hands are now on deck to see that industry springs up, manufacturing companies springs up, and all kinds of products. Nigerian likes to look nice all the time. Nigerians are big buyers, and you can see that, access to take it now. You can buy a computer and pay for it against your income, against your fixed monthly salary. Again, in part on that is, as a consumer credit, you must watch your behavior in the workplace.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Professor Chris Onalo, for joining us on Business Express.
Thank you.
The time is too short.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about it some more
I look
another
forward
time.
to that. Thank you.
Right. Nigerian government says it is committed to end gas flaring by 2020. Minister of State Petroleum Resources Emmanuel Ibe Kachiku said this in recognition of the benefits that can be harnessed from flared gas to stimulate economic growth and environmental protection. Energy correspondent Lydia Sampson reports.
Flaring releases methane, a greenhouse gas that traps heat in the atmosphere. Flaring contributes to global warming and has negative impact on the health and environment of people who live near a flared well. In its resolve to consolidate on the policy position of the federal government that gas flaring is unacceptable, President Muhammadu Buhari gave a marching order. This, Emmanuel Ibe Kachiku says, necessitated the setting up of two committees to take the Nigerian gas flare commercialization program to the next level.
The important thing is that the sudden realization that we're serious about this and we're going to move on and we're going to somebody asked me what happens to 2020. The truth is that after 2020, the issues of flare will no longer be issues of just penalty payments. It will be a license to operate issue. Whether or not you can continue to operate in a manner in which you're basically doing things that are hazardous to the environment. So everybody understands that the president has given marching orders on this, and it's now showtime, really.
The minister said it is time to move Nigeria from the burning of firewood to more gas utilization as part of efforts to mitigate the hazards of gas flaring. With over 800 expressions of interest from companies looking to get involved in the initiative, the Chairman Steering Committee, Rabiu Suleiman, and other members says gas flaring in Nigeria will be drastically reduced in due course. They are also optimistic of more jobs in the Niger Delta, which is expected to have ripple effects across Nigeria as a whole.
NSE Oil Share Index for 12th April 2019 ended on a positive note by 0.74% to close at 29,565.95 basis points, with market capitalization at 11.1 trillion naira. Zenith Bank top trade at the end of the session, followed by Losaco and Access Bank. The gainers table was led by NEM Insurance PLC, while Ikeja Hotel led the losers table. Shares in Asia were mixed on Friday afternoon as investors awaited the release of Chinese trade data for March, Let's join Bossede Abel for an update.
Trade began on the global scene mixed. European stocks opened slightly lower in early trading amid caution on global growth and U.S. corporate earnings. Asian stock markets were mixed as hopes continued to rise for a U.S.-China trade deal. The Shanghai Composite dipped just below the flat line to 3,188.63, while the Hang Seng Index topped 0.24%. Also, Nikkei rose 0.73% to 21,870.56. U.S. stock futures were slightly higher as market participants awaited the start of earnings season. Dow futures rose 78 points, indicating a positive open of more than 70 points. Futures on the S&P and Nasdaq Composite Index were both seen slightly higher. Back in Africa, stocks were mostly positive. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Nairobi All Share, Ghana's GSE Composite Index and Namibia Overall Index commenced on a bullish note, while Tunisia's Tunidex started low.
And this is where we wrap up this edition of Business Express. Remember, all previous episodes are available on YouTube, and you can check our Twitter handle at NTA News Now. Remember to join us again, same time, same station, next week, Monday. I am Muplang Dakok saying, keep thinking and doing business.